Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Cape Caribbean Studies revision session. And the topic that I'm doing today is contribution of sports to Caribbean development. For those of you who don't know me, I am Radhika Mahes. I am a historian by profession. I have a PhD in history from UWI as well as a master's and bachelor's in history as well. I was a visiting Commonwealth Scholar at the University of Manchester. Currently, I'm a senior lecturer in history at COSTAT, that is the College of Science, Technology and Applied Arts of Trinidad and Tobago. I lecture in history of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as Caribbean anthropology and culture of Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, I am the co-author of Caribbean History for CSECT, and I am the founder and director of an NGO called Support Autism TNT. It is an NGO that advocates for children and adults living with autism in Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to start off by telling you that this NGO is based on volunteerism, and we have more than 300 young persons your age, well, between the ages of 10 to 25 who volunteer with us. So those of you who want to pursue a career later on in medicine or anything regarding children and development and inclusion and so on, feel free to shout me out after if you want to volunteer with us, or look for us on social media. So that said, let's get straight to our topic today. Okay, so the topic is contribution of sports to Caribbean development. Now, CXC sent out this document last month with a list of the topics that are coming for your exam that you should focus on for your exam. Okay, and sports and the contribution of sports to Caribbean development is one of those topics. And I chose to do this topic today because it's a simple, straightforward topic. It comes under module 2 in your syllabus. It's using Caribbean development. And in the syllabus, when we look at this particular topic, they ask us for certain things. The first one is generation of income. Second one is health and fitness, educational opportunities, development of a Caribbean identity, discipline and morale, international recognition, and sports tourism. Okay, so those are the things that you have to focus on for this topic. Now, as I said, the reason why I chose this topic is because it is a pretty straightforward topic. This is literally everything that you have to know for this topic, and the question will come on any one of these or combination of all of these. Okay, so it is a topic that by the time we finish this session and you get all the information, if you practice writing a few essays, you should be able to go into that exam room and do a very good essay on sports and Caribbean development. So let's start right away. In this presentation, I am going to focus on these main things. Which sports are common in the Caribbean? Now that is just background information, and that is information that you would use probably in an essay, in your introduction to your essay. So the focus really is on how has sports impacted positively on Caribbean development, and what factors restrict sports as a major factor in Caribbean development. So how does sports encourage Caribbean development? And how, what are those factors that restrict it from actually playing a major role in Caribbean development? And to answer those questions, I will be doing it alongside the topics in the syllabus that I just pointed out to you, okay, those 7 sections. So, introduction. We know that historically, sports have always played a major role in the Caribbean. It has always been a part of Caribbean culture and society. And you would have done in module 1, you would have done historical processes, and you would have learned about the indigenous people, and you would have learned about colonization by the Europeans and so on. So from the earliest time on with the indigenous people, we see where sports and recreation was an important part of their lifestyle. Okay, in fact, the Tainos had a game called Batos that they played in a communal setting. And it was more or less very similar to what we know as football today. where you had a ball and you had two teams and they had to get the ball in the goal. The only difference was the ball was made out of stone and they could not touch it with their hands. But they did have communal sports even then during the period of the pre-Columbian periods with the indigenous people. Then with colonization and with the arrival of Europeans, starting with the Spanish, then the British, then we had French, Dutch, and so on, Portuguese and so on, we see where there was the introduction of European sports. Okay, and today in the Caribbean, we have certain sports that stand out at a Caribbean level. Now, individually, they may vary according to country, but regionally, the two that we have to mention are cricket and football. And when we talk about cricket, regionally, that is because remember, we are looking at the development of the Caribbean on the whole. We have to mention the West Indies cricket team. We have to mention things like CPL, the Caribbean Premier League. We have to mention the fact that individual countries have their individual cricket teams and they compete against each other. We have the Trinbago Knight Riders, we have the Barbados Tridents, the Guyana Amazon Warriors, and so on. Okay, so to start off, when you're writing an essay on the development of sports, in your introduction, you can mention some of these things. You will give some background information to sports in the Caribbean. Now let's get straight into, let me just move this so I wouldn't block the slide. I'll put you up there. We could also mention that, you know, popular sports other than football and cricket, we have water sports such as sailing, swimming, basketball, volleyball, netball, track and field has been dominating for a few years now. We could also mention that sports is so important that it is being promoted at both the primary and secondary school level. And we see where we have things like the football, the secondary school football league, the cricket leagues, and so on. In fact, many of the schools in the Caribbean will have sports day. Most of the Caribbean countries have Ministry of Sports. Okay, so it is a recreational activity that has been developed into competitive sports. And when we are talking about the relevance or the link between sports and Caribbean development, we're looking at that aspect. We're looking at more competitive sports, to some extent recreational sports. Now, as I am talking to you about it, if you have questions, you can write them in the chat. And when I'm finished, once we have time, I will go back and I'll try to answer some of them, okay? So you can make a note of it as we go along. So how has sports impacted positively on Caribbean development? Or to what extent has sports impacted on Caribbean development? Because a question can come like that, okay? And when we're talking about the development, the impact of sports on Caribbean development, we first have to note, again, background information, that yes, sports have contributed to Caribbean development, but it is not the same extent for all Caribbean countries. Okay, so the extent of contribution to Caribbean, to the development of a country, all depend on the country's wealth and the fact that the country might be investing in training and infrastructure and sponsorships and so on. And not all Caribbean countries do that on an equal manner. It differs according to Caribbean countries. It varies according to their wealth, it varies according to their policies, and it varies according to their ability to invest in sports. Okay? So it depends on the country's deliberate policies to promote sports. So for example, in Trinidad, we might have a deliberate policy where we encourage sponsorship of football and cricket, for example. In Jamaica, it might be track and field, and so on. It also varies according to private investment or corporate investment and their endorsement of sports and sports personalities. So in Trinidad, again, we see where NGC, the National Gas Company, they sponsor, I think it is the primary school cricket league. Then, you know, you have different companies that will sponsor different things. Digicel tend to sponsor, to be a major sponsor for both cricket and football. B-Mobile as well. So when we're talking about the impact on Caribbean development, we have to note that that impact is not the same across the board for each country. It differs according to country, and it differs according to the ability of the country to invest in sports or to make policies especially geared towards the promotion of sports. Okay, with that said, let us look now at the ways in which sports have actually impacted on Caribbean development. And the first one, from your syllabus, I am speaking directly to the syllabus as I go along. So we want to make sure that we cover everything in the syllabus and we stick to our topic. So the first one is generation of income. And sports, the point is sports can be a stimulus for economic growth and can contribute to the GDP of Caribbean countries. Okay, so that is the point you are making. So if you are writing an essay on examine the extent to which sports contributed towards Caribbean development, and in your introduction, you talk about all your background information, everything, and you have a thesis statement saying this essay will examine the ways in which sports contribute to the development of the Caribbean. Your first point is sports can be a stimulus for economic growth and can contribute to the GDP of Caribbean countries. So you make your point and then you go on to explain it. How do we explain it? How does it contribute towards economic growth? Many different ways. The first one is employment. So whenever we have sporting events such as CPL or World Cup cricket or 2020 cricket or whatever it is, that generates employment opportunities, because then we need to hire the people who would be maintaining the grounds. We need to hire persons on the day to sell tickets and so on. Okay, so it generates employment because of sports events, because of construction and maintenance of stadiums, because of the rental of stadiums. A good example is when we have CPL in Trinidad. We use our stadiums, Brian Lara Stadium, as well as the Oval. Okay, it generates employment by providing jobs to professional athletes. It provides jobs for those in the hotel and food industries. If we have World Cup cricket, or even CPL, and we have persons come in from other countries as spectators or even as participants, whether it's cricketers or coaches or therapists and so on, they have to stay in hotels. So that kind of give a little kick to the hotel industry, and that stimulates the food and beverage industry. Okay, it generates employment for therapists and coaches and so on. So that's the first point to explain how sports is a stimulus for economic growth and can contribute to the GDP of Caribbean countries. Through employment, it can also do that through taxes. Sporting goods that are entering the country, they have to pay taxes to clear these goods. When they're sold, I might also have VAT added on to them. Sporting professionals, they have to pay taxes based on their earnings. And a good example is Usain Bolt, who earned over 30 million US dollars since the 2008 Olympic. Okay, so through employment, through taxes, and actually, I got tired of writing on my slide. I decided to just put this entire diagram for you. And at this point, I should mention to you that I mentioned already that it is being recorded. What I will do is I will post it on my YouTube channel after, so you can go back and you can look at it and you can get all the details. Okay, so it generates income through the manufacturing industry, manufacturing of clothing for teams and team support. I'll give you a good example. When Trinidad qualified for the World Cup, Football World Cup, you see all kind of Trinidad t-shirts that were being printed, football t-shirts that were being printed. Okay, so printing of t-shirts, manufacturing of t-shirts, all those, all the other the gears, t-shirts, hoodies, caps, everything you could think about, even the national flag. So it stimulates the manufacturing industry. It stimulates the service industry, such as sports medicine and everything related to sports medicine, therapy, doctors, orthopedic, everything you could think about. Nutrition management because of diet consultation, meal planning, physiotherapy, even gyms and weight training and all those things, those kind of services are stimulated. Okay, and they contribute towards the economic development of the country. For example, gyms, they pay taxes. They if they open in a mall, they might have to pay rent. You know, they employ persons, they employ trainers and so on. So at every level we think about, we see where sports has the potential to generate an income. Okay, media coverage. You get the media houses can make money from sponsors, from advertisers, so from advertisements, and that goes hand in hand with sponsorship. You have so many companies that will come on board to sponsor teams. You might have brand sports persons being brand ambassadors for different companies. You also have that whole area of research and publication, where different corporate or sponsors, national sponsors, will come on board to stimulate research in the different areas. And in the last point that have here is gambling. So horse racing is very popular in the Caribbean, and that is one way in which, you know, you have all the large winnings are being taxed. They have to pay taxes on it and all those other things that you find linked to gambling, to the gambling industry. Okay, so when we're talking about the economic contribution of sports, you have many, many examples you can use. But I'm going to go back to the slide and I'm going to tell you that you have to make sure that you state your point. And the point is, sports can be used as a stimulus. Sports can be a stimulus for economic growth and can contribute to the GDP of Caribbean countries. And then you go on to explain exactly how sports is contributing to the development through all these things that I have given you. And when you are writing an essay on anything with sports, make sure that you have a lot of examples. So for example, when you talk about sponsorship, make sure and mention people like companies like Cable and Wireless and Digicel and NGC and all these that sponsor things. So give examples to support every point that you make. Okay. Now, the second topic, well, the second point that we have to look at is health and fitness. And this was the second one in the syllabus. And the point is, sports promote health and fitness in the Caribbean. Oh, there's a typo there. It's supposed to be promote, not promotes. So I'll fix that. Sports promote healthy lifestyles in the Caribbean. How does healthy lifestyle actually lead to a country's development? Simple. A healthier population will mean less burden or less of an economic burden on the country. Okay, because if you have a healthier population, the country is not going to have to spend as much money on its healthcare system. That's the first thing. The second thing is it increases productivity, because when you have a healthier population, you have a more productive workforce. You have a workforce that doesn't have to apply for sick leave all the time. Okay. In addition to that, a healthier population or a healthier lifestyle promotes a sense of self-worth and empowerment. And that can boost morale in a country amongst the population. One of the other things that we see is that exercise helps to slow down the effects of aging and helps to control degenerative diseases. Diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, and heart diseases that are so very common in the Caribbean and that have actually been increasing in the Caribbean. In Trinidad and Tobago, for example, we see where these three, hypertension, diabetes, and heart diseases, are the highest cause of mortality in our country. Okay, so when a country promotes exercise, or when a country's population resorts to exercise and participate in exercise on a regular basis, it means that that can be used to help control degenerative diseases, which again leads to lower medical costs as well as lower mortality rates. So going back to the point, sports promote healthy lifestyles in the Caribbean. Okay, and these are the points that you would use to explain that. And whatever country you are from, because I see I have students from throughout the Caribbean in this session, whatever country you are from, you can use examples that are specific to your country. So for example, if there's a specific health regime or exercise regime that is common in your country, you know, whether the government have started through the Ministry of Sport, they have started specific exercise programs for the aging population or for younger population, you can use those as examples in your essay or in your whatever answer you're given. Okay, so the second one was health and fitness. Now, I put a long paragraph here, and it's a really, really lovely paragraph that I came across because it said everything so nicely. I'm not going to read it out, but it is in the slide. So if you want, you can go back to this slide later on when I post it on the YouTube video, and you would see it kind of summarize everything that we have been saying so far. Okay, let's move on. The third one is educational opportunities. Okay, so how does sports lead to promote Caribbean development? Through the creation of educational opportunities. Sports can open up educational opportunities for Caribbean citizens. And there are different things you can use to explain this point. So you make your point and then you go on to explain your point. One of the things is that students at the secondary school level have the opportunity to earn scholarships and bursaries for their sporting achievements, both at Caribbean colleges and universities, as well as internationally, especially the USA, as well as Europe. Okay, and I give you an example. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have the Secondary Schools Football League. And every single year, nearing the finals of the Secondary School Football League, we tend to have scouts, football scouts, who come from colleges in the US as well as in Europe, specifically places like Scotland. Okay, and they come to Trinidad, and they come in to see these players as they play for their schools. And many of our players have actually been awarded scholarships to go and play for colleges abroad. And these scholarships would normally cover their entire tuition, partly or fully, partial or fully. And while they're studying, they will be required to play football for the colleges that gave them the scholarship. We also see it happening more recently with basketball, as well as track and field. Okay, so that is one way in which it can generate, or it can be a precursor to educational opportunities. Also, through these educational opportunities, sports person can access training in their relevant fields. We now have degrees in things like sports development or sports management at the University of the West Indies. We have degrees in other sports related fields, such as physiotherapy, sports medicine, and coaching certificates for a wide area of sports at different levels. So when we're talking about educational opportunities, these are some of the things that we are talking about. Okay, so that was the third one. Sports can open up educational opportunities for Caribbean citizens. The fourth one, before I go on to the fourth one, it's very important that I mention at this point that yes, it can open up educational opportunities, but it can also prove to be a problem, because not every country has the ability or the resources or the capital to invest in sports at the primary and secondary school level. Okay? Okay, the next point is the development of Caribbean identity. The point is, sports can encourage a sense of Caribbean identity and Caribbean nationalism. Okay, so it can be used to encourage a sense of Caribbean identity and Caribbean nationalism. How does it happen? How can sports do this? One, through international recognition. So when countries in the region or the region on a whole is represented internationally, that can bring recognition for the region, as well as for individual countries or individual athletes. And good examples of these are World Cup football. In 1998, the Reggae Boys of Jamaica qualified for the World Cup. In 2006, the Soca Warriors of Trinidad and Tobago qualified for the World Cup. And when that happened, we see where the entire region came out to support them. It wasn't just Trinidadians supporting the Soca Warriors or Jamaicans supporting the Reggae Boys. It was an entire region that was now supporting the Trinidad and Jamaica in the World Cup. And that's because you see that sense of regional identity when a team qualifies for an international event like that. We also saw it with Usain Bolt when he competed in the Beijing Olympic in 2008. Okay, the entire Caribbean was in support of him, as well as the other track and field athletes from Jamaica. The other way in which a sense of Caribbean identity and nationalism can come around is when we get that sense of patriotism and unity throughout the Caribbean. And the best example of this is West Indies cricket, the West Indies cricket team. So we do see that the Caribbean, the entire Western countries from the West Indies of Caribbean will come together to support the Caribbean, the West Indies cricket team when they're playing. We saw it especially with the Cricket World Cup. Okay, so we see that sense of nationalism and patriotism. And at the same time, while it can encourage that sense of nationalism and patriotism, it could also be a problem. Because at the end of the day, the countries in the Caribbean have their own individual identity. I will identify as a Trinbagonian. A Jamaican will say I'm Jamaican. Someone from Barbados will say I'm Bajan. You don't say, well, I'm from the Caribbean. You identify first with your country. And we see that seeping into sports at a regional level because there's competitiveness amongst the different countries. And that competitiveness can lead to insecurity. It can lead to rifts between the countries. It can lead to disagreements. And we usually see it with the West Indies cricket team again, when, you know, countries can't agree on things like which players can go on the team, how much money to pay the team, and all the politics surrounding the West Indies cricket team. It can also hinder Caribbean nationalism and that sense of regional identity because there might be loyalties according to ethnicity and race, or there might be loyalty for your individual country. Then on top of all that, sports is not developed to the same level in each individual country. So yes, sports can lead to a sense of patriotism and unity and Caribbean identity and Caribbean nationalism. But at the same time, it could actually hinder all that because of that sense of individual identity for a specific country. Okay, so that was our fourth point. Our fifth point, according to the syllabus, is the topic of discipline and morale. Okay, and the point I want to make is that sports require a level of discipline that can be translated to other aspects of a person's life. So that is the point that you're making. Sports require a level of discipline that can be translated to other aspects of a person's life. And that is how it impacts development. It impacts development through discipline and morale because it helps to create a population with better work ethics. It helps to create a population that has better concept of teamwork or group work. And all that can lead to an increase in productivity. Okay. And then one of the other areas where we see discipline and morale playing a role is when we use sports in youth development. You know, when we develop sporting events or sporting programs to help youths in at-risk environment so that we can get them away from crime and drug and violence and so on. So when we're talking about discipline and morale, we are looking at the fact that sports require a level of discipline that can be translated to other aspects of a person's life. Okay. The next topic in the syllabus is international recognition, which I kind of touched on, but we want to put it as a clear topic separate from the others. And the point is for this one is that sports can bring international recognition to the Caribbean region. So sports can bring international recognition to the Caribbean region. How does it do this? One, through international investments into sports, into Caribbean sports by private sponsors. So for example, we have companies such as Nike and Puma investing in our footballers or cricketers and so on, or track and field athletes. And I use the example of the Trinbago Night Riders, which is owned by Shah Rukh Khan. Okay, so we see where international individuals and companies can sponsor Caribbean sports. We also see where Caribbean sports persons are hired by international teams. And a good one is IPL in India, the India Premier League, where many of our Caribbean cricketers playing for different teams in the IPL. Okay, the same thing with footballers in the UK and Europe. Dwight York from Tobago, he played for Manchester United for a long time. He was one of their their best strikers. So when we talk about international recognition, we are talking about recognition for individual countries, individual sports persons, individual athletes, because of their accomplishments. Okay. Caribbean sports person earn from endorsements, and these endorsements normally come from international companies, such again, Usain Bolt is a very good example. He advertises for Gatorade, for Visa, and for Virgin Media. So yes, sports can bring international recognition to the Caribbean region. Okay, whether it is individual athletes or the country or the region as a whole. Okay, our next topic is sports tourism. And the point I want to make for sports tourism is sports tourism can help in Caribbean development. Simple as that. Okay, sports tourism can help in Caribbean development. How do you explain the point? You talk about the fact that when sports fans and athletes visit Caribbean countries to either participate or spectate for major sporting events, that is sports tourism. We have all these athletes coming in. We have all these fans who come in. And examples can be ICC Cricket World Cup. We had 100,000 visitors who came in to the Caribbean region. And we have such diehard cricket fans out there. For example, let me use the English cricket team as an example. They have these diehard cricket fans, and wherever England is playing, they will go. Okay? So if England is playing the West Indies in Trinidad, they will come to Trinidad to watch the match. If England is playing the West Indies in Barbados, they will go to Barbados. So during the ICC Cricket World Cup, which was hosted in the Caribbean countries, we had more than 100,000 visitors coming into the Caribbean. And that ICC Cricket World Cup was watched by 2 billion viewers. So when we're talking about sports tourism, we're talking about fans and athletes coming into the countries. we also talking about persons coming in to use our facilities. So because of Jamaica's success in track and field, athletes come from all over the world to visit and train at the Usain Bolt track at UWI Mona campus. Okay, so because of that, that is sports tourism. That's people coming in, tourists coming in for sports and sports related activities. We also see where there's travel between Caribbean countries, and the best examples of these are cricket, football, and water sports, especially cricket and football. So when we have the CPL, the Caribbean Premier League, you have fans for those who, again, diehard supporters of, let's say, the Trinbago Knight Riders. They might go to, if they're playing, if the TKR is playing in Barbados, they might go to Barbados to see them play, and so on. A lot of people actually plan their vacations around these events, around football and cricket matches and so on. Okay, so sports tourism can help in Caribbean development because it generates income from all of these things that I spoke about. Okay. Okay. So as I said, if you have any questions, write it in the chat. I'll go back to the chat in a bit. So far, we look at all the ways in which, well, all the things that can promote Caribbean development, the ways in which sports can promote Caribbean development. Okay, now sometimes it doesn't happen like that. Yes, we list all the things like sports tourism and moral and all these things, but at the end of the day, not, I told you at the beginning that not every country has the same resources and capital to develop sports to the same extent. So we actually have factors that restrict sports as a major factor in Caribbean development. And the point is, sports, like if you get an essay asking you what are the factors that restrict Caribbean development, you will say that sports do not play a major role in the development of the Caribbean. This is the other part of what we were saying now. So all the time we were looking at how it can help Caribbean development. Now we are looking at how it actually restricts Caribbean development or hinders Caribbean development. Okay, and how does this happen? One, because some countries do not have the wealth to invest in sports. Many Caribbean countries do not have the money to build stadiums or to have top of the line training facilities or to provide equipment or even to have sporting programs in secondary or primary schools or at whatever level. So some countries do not have the wealth to invest in sports. The second one is sports tourism is only developed in those countries which have the infrastructure and capital to do so. So yes, I have been talking about all the good things about sports tourism and how so many people come into the Caribbean to follow their cricket team or football team and so on. But then think about it. Which are the countries that are hosting cricket matches? It's the one that have the infrastructure to do so. Okay, they have the proper grounds or the proper stadium and so on. So even then, sports tourism could be restricted to specific countries. Normally the larger, richer countries like Trinidad and Jamaica, for example, Barbados, they would be the ones to really encourage sports tourism because they have the infrastructure and the capital to do so. Sometimes when countries invest in athletes and sports professionals, they don't return to the Caribbean to contribute. And we see this happening with football or track and field or swimming, a lot of sports actually. And the reason is, let's say, for example, a secondary school football player gets a scholarship to go and play for a college in Scotland or in England or even in the US. He will be training there. He will be playing regularly. He will have access to all the training facilities and so on. And when he's finished, he might be given he might get to play with a football team as a professional player or as a semi-professional player. And he will have all the access to the tools that he needs for his development. If he comes back to Trinidad, he's very limited in what would be available, or in the Caribbean on the whole. Or even if he comes back and he makes it to the at the country's team, the national team in one of these countries. Training facilities, employment opportunities, and so on are still limited. So when we talk about athletes and sports professionals, we need to note that many of them, they have no choice but to train abroad, because that is where the better training facilities and the better opportunities are available. Okay. The next point is that even when countries invest in health and fitness, other factors play a negative role, such as poverty, pollution, and the mentality of the people. Okay, so yes, we might have health and fitness program, we might have gyms, and we might have stadiums, and we might have different sporting activities that people can take part in. But then things like poverty might restrict them. You know, a person from a lower income group might not be able to afford to pay gym fees, or might not be able to afford to pay to be in a football club or swimming lessons, for example. Okay, so things like that still play a role in restricting the extent to which sports can play a major role in development. When I say the mentality of the people, I'm talking about, you know, we do have people throughout the Caribbean who don't see exercise as something that is important, or something that, you know, they should be consistent with. It is more something that you do once in a while. It doesn't really have any major impact on their life, and so on. So even if the country try to invest in it, it doesn't mean that the population, or the general population, the wider population, the majority of the people in the country will actually take part in it or benefit from it. Okay. And I mentioned the last point already, that sports can lead to competition and rivalry rather than Caribbean nationalism. I'd already dealt with that point. So let me just go back. So when we're looking at the factors that restrict sports as in Caribbean development, we're looking at the fact that countries do not have the wealth to capital to invest. We're looking at the limitations of sports tourism. We're looking at athletes and professionals who do not train, they do not return to the Caribbean and help to develop the sports in the Caribbean to any large extent. We're looking at things like poverty and pollution and people's mentality that limits the benefits of health and fitness. And we're looking at the ways in which Caribbean nationalism is hindered because of competition and rivalry. Okay, so those are the things that we have to talk about. Now, I have touched on the main points for all of the questions that I started off with. I have touched on the main points. As I said, you can come up with your examples for these. When you are writing an essay for Caribbean studies, it is very important that you use examples to support your point. So if you make, for example, a statement that, you know, athletes and professionals do not return to the Caribbean and contribute in any significant way, feel free to list some of them. Feel free to list the sports that we see this happening in. Okay, this is what makes your essay stand out. When you give examples, so there are three things that you have to do. You have to state your point, which is the general point I've been given. Then you explain your point, and within the explanation, you give examples to support it. So you state in your point, you explain in your point, and you're giving examples to support your points. So when you are doing an essay for Caribbean studies, those are the main things that you have to do. Now let's look at the kind of questions. I pulled some past paper questions here, and let's look at the kind of questions that tend to come for this. Sports, number one. Sports play a major role in regional development. Discuss the extent to which you agree with this statement. All these are 30 marks questions. Number two, using examples, explain how sports tourism has contributed to Caribbean development. Number three, Describe the contribution made by sports to regional integration and economic development. Number 4, discuss the extent to which sports have contributed to the development of Caribbean identity regionally and in the diaspora. And number 5, to what extent do sports in the Caribbean provide educational opportunities for Caribbean people as well as a route to Caribbean nationalism? You see those points that I went through with you before? Everything that I went through with you before? You have to pull out the ones that apply to each one of these questions, but your answer to each of these questions is in the information that the points that I ran through with you before. Okay, everything that I ran through, the answer is there. Okay, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen because I know I am seeing the chat. It keeps blinking, so I know that you have questions. So I'm just going to take a minute and go to your questions. Okay, just now. I'm just scrolling back up to see where your question started. Okay, I think here it is. Okay, is it also safe to say, through sports tourism, Caribbean identity is also developed? Yes, you can link them. So what I did in my presentation of the topic to you, I pull them out because of how they are on the syllabus. I try to do it according to the syllabus, but all of them can be linked. Sports tourism could be linked to Caribbean identity. Sports tourism could be linked to economic development. Sports tourism could be a point under economic development. So you can link them. Okay, so if you get a question only on sports tourism, you will have to pull out some of the points under economic development to answer that question. You might have to pull out some of the points under Caribbean identity to answer that question. Okay, so what I did was to give it to you as it's stated in the syllabus, just to make it simple and straightforward for you to answer. But you now have to pull out the topics, the points from there and apply it to whatever topic, and they can all be linked. Okay. The next question. How effective is sports in Caribbean regional integration in terms of forming a regional identity? So I went through that one. I went through that with the nationalism and patriotism and Caribbean identity and so on. And its impact on movement of labor and foreign investment. So when we're talking about the movement of labor and foreign investment, you're pulling those points from the point on economic. The fact that you can make money from people coming into the region, sponsorships and so on. The fact that you can have foreign investors. So you can pull the points from economics. So this is the next good one where regional integration is very well linked to economic factors. Okay, as I said, I dealt with them individually, but you will have to pull them out according to the question that you're doing. So what I advise you to do is know each of the points for each of the topic. When you go into your exam room, you see the question that comes and you draw from that, you pull the points from what you have done, what we have done to answer the specific question that is asked. Okay, another question. Can you consider persons wanting to come to the Caribbean to use facilities under impact of international recognition? Definitely. Okay, so it can come under international recognition. It can come under economic contribution. Because when they come into the Caribbean, I mean, you are, again, all different industries are influenced. You have to buy an airline ticket. You have to stay at a hotel or a guest house or somewhere. You have to buy food. Okay, so again, it is all directly linked. If you describe it in the manner of the success on certain platforms, cause international person to desire to collaborate use our facilities or train with our athletes or coaches. Okay, that was just a statement, but I get your point about international recognition and sponsorship and economics all being linked. Someone wants to know if I'll be going through other topics that are coming. I will certainly try. If I am, I will send out a flyer, okay? So I'll get back to you all on that. Are there any examples of countries that you can give us that don't have the wealth to invest in sports? So throughout the Caribbean, you would see that certain countries invest in certain sports. And when we're talking about cricket and football, you tend to hear mostly Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados. Those are the ones that dominate. Okay, the smaller countries like Martinique and Guadeloupe, and even to some extent Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they don't have the kind of wealth and capital that the larger countries like Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados have. So just think about those smaller countries that are not, you're not able to, because they have to invest in other more what they consider bigger priorities. Someone said Haiti probably, and that's a good example, as well as space for stadium and equipment. So we take it for granted in the larger islands in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, for example. We take it for granted that, you know, countries will have stadiums and so on, but that's not true. A lot of the smaller islands like St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent, Martinique, Guadeloupe, they don't have the stadiums to the extent, or even the infrastructure to the extent that we have here. They have much smaller ones, and the infrastructure is not as developed. Okay, someone asks if Darren Sammy has a cricket school. I think quite a few of them, not just him. I know that Darren Ganga, he had started, he does, ever so often, he does training facilities, training programs for primary and secondary school cricketers in Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, I know that Brian Lara had facilitated a few of those as well. I also know that Dwight York had facilitated football camps in Tobago as well as in Trinidad. And if I'm not wrong, I remember Atta Bolden had facilitated a series of track, with generally sports sessions, sports training session, and it would have been in track and field. So we do have examples. What I advise you to do is to find out the examples for your specific countries and use them, because those are the ones you will remember. If it is something happening in your country, you will remember it faster than, you know, trying to learn off information that I am telling you. Someone mentioned that St. Lucia doesn't have a national stadium. There you go. That's one example. Also, Turk and Caicos, Montserrat, St. Kitts, more examples. Okay, Darren Sammy Cricket Ground in St. Lucia can hold 15,000 people. That is excellent example to use. St. Kitts have some stadium. Okay, lovely. You see, I like this because you all are giving me examples that you know about. Someone wants to know where they can access the recording. The recording will be posted on my YouTube channel. I will ask the host to message it in the group chat. So you can just check the channel. As soon as we finish, I will post it up. Okay, so you can go through it. Oh yeah, I see she already posted the channel. Someone wants to know if I can do a crash course on religion. I will definitely try. I know that you have a couple of weeks again for your exam. Okay, I think that's about the questions. The person who asks how you can volunteer with Support Autism TNT, just find us on social media. We're on Facebook as well as Instagram, and just send a message. Okay, we welcome youth volunteers. Okay, I am seeing requests to do regional integration as a topic. I know regional integration is one of the tougher topics, so I will try to put in a few more, and I will definitely let you all know. Before I close off, I want to run through the structure of your exam. Okay, I am not assuming that each of you know how to write an essay. So I just want to take a minute and run through that. Okay, there's one more question. You mentioned diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart diseases as degenerative diseases. Would they be more lifestyle or chronic diseases? They are more lifestyle diseases. So when we're talking about sports, when we're talking about health and fitness, we're talking about lifestyle diseases. Because the whole idea is that health and fitness becomes a part of your daily lifestyle. And that is when you will see the positive impact of health and fitness. Okay, so we're not really talking about chronic diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and so on. We're talking more about lifestyle diseases. Question: do the larger countries ever assist in the development of sports within the less wealthy islands? I think that when you say country, maybe not country to country, but more in terms of corporate sponsors. So a good example will be Cable and Wireless or Digicel. Those are throughout, those are companies that operate throughout the region. So they would help the different islands, okay? Not necessarily the government of one country helping the government of another country, but you find it happening more in terms of sponsorship by corporate sponsors who operate throughout the region. You also might find it in terms of technical assistance or in terms of exchange programs. So for example, coaches from one country might go to do training sessions in another country. But I think in terms of direct donations or direct gifts of money and capital, I don't think it comes in that way. It will come more in terms of sharing personnel or sharing experiences or sharing professional advice or sponsorships from corporate sponsors who operate throughout the region. Okay, so someone mentioned that you have 15 days to your exam. That's a lot of time. You save. Once you keep doing your work, you will be able to answer it. Regional integration again. Okay, if I am given an essay on the contribution of sports to development, should we include the negative effects it can have, such as the rivalry among regional states or the lack of economic resources in different territories, or should priority be placed on the positives? Good question, and I'm glad you asked that question. Because let me tell you, when you get an essay saying, discuss the contribution of sports to the development of the Caribbean, you will start off by talking about all the ways in sports that actually lead to positive development. But you must include the negative ones as well. Now, you can do it in two ways. Right there, when you talk, let's say the point is economic, the ways in which it leads to development in terms of economic. When you talk about all the ways economically, you can have a couple of sentences that say, but bear in mind that countries that are not as economically developed may not have sports playing such a large role. So you could do it there within the point, or you could do it at the end of the essay when you're about to finish, right before your conclusion, or as part of your conclusion, you can mention that you have looked at all the positive ways, but there are also negative ways. Now, the other thing that I have to mention to you, it all depends on your thesis statement. Your thesis statement is extremely important. So if you are given a question that says, discuss the ways in which sports have contributed to the development of Trinidad and Tobago. If your thesis statement is, this essay will examine both the negative and positive effects or positive ways in which sports have contributed to the development of the Caribbean, then you have to have 3 or 4 negative points and 3 or 4 positive points. Okay, so your thesis statement is very important. And every time you write an essay, in your introduction, you must have a very, very clear and precise thesis statement. And I normally tell my students that the best way to do that is to end your paragraph, your introductory paragraph, by saying, this essay will examine, or the contribution of sports to the development of the Caribbean will be examined in this essay. But always put it very clear in your introduction, because then everything that comes in the body of your essay, all the points that you write after that, will be supporting your thesis statement. That is the proper way to structure an essay. Okay? Okay, sorry. If you want to make me host anyway. Okay, I'm going through. I see a lot more questions. Do I have any essay examples? What I normally do is I'm sorry we don't have the time, but I normally would make sure that when I teach a topic, I put up a question and I get the students to structure it, how they will structure it in an exam. Okay, could you please explain the sport tourism point again? So what I would do, I wouldn't explain it again, but I would like you to go back to the video later and have a look at it, okay? Because I want to continue to something else. Please repeat the handle of the social media accounts for volunteering. So it's called Support Autism TNT, and you can find us on Instagram or Facebook, Support Autism TNT. Okay, I'm going down. When essays say specifically, to what extent do you agree with? Does that mean you have to include both negatives and positive of the topics? Again, it depends on your thesis statement. So if a question asks to what extent do you agree with, and your thesis statement is in this essay, I will show that sports have contributed positively to the development of the Caribbean, then you will stick to positive and you will just have negative in your closing paragraphs. Okay? If on the other hand, you have a thesis statement that says, this essay will show that both positive and negative, there are both positive and negative impact of sports on the development of the Caribbean, then you will have to look at both equally in the essay. So it all depends on your thesis statement. What makes a good thesis generally? Simple, straightforward sentence. You don't want to go all over the place with your sentence, with your thesis statement. One simple sentence, and it must speak directly to the question asked. Okay? Okay, I'm just scrolling down again. I think that's it for the questions. Yep, I went through all. Okay, yes, I went through all. I want to do one thing quickly. Somebody asked my email address. I am putting it in the chat for you. Okay, so last question that just came in is exactly what I'm going to look at. What is the difference in terms of structure of a 20-mark essay and a 30-mark essay? And I don't know if you would have seen this document that came from CXC. Okay, it is available on CXC website, and they have a very clear format of the exam. So Caribbean Studies Examination Format, paper 2. This essay paper is 3 hours or 180 minutes long. You are required to complete 4 essays in this time. This paper is marked out of 100 marks and accounts for 33% of the total assessment. The examination paper consists of 2 types of essay questions. Essay worth 20 marks and 30 marks on modules 1 and 2, and it is divided into 4 sections. You must choose 1 question from each section as shown below. So look at it. You have to choose 4 questions. Okay. So for type A questions, it's 20 marks, and you are choosing either question 1 or 2, that is from module 1, or question 3 or 4 from module 2. And those 2 are for 20 marks. Then you have type B questions, which are worth 30 marks. And again, you choose in module 1, either question 5 or 6, or module 2, either question 7 or 8. So this is paper 2. And they give you a good idea of how to go about writing essays, and basically have a breakdown of it. I'm going to try to send you this in the chat, so you can go through it, the essay structure and so on. The most important thing that I wanted was for you to note how your exam is structured. You have 4 questions to do, 2 for 20 marks and 2 for 30 marks. Okay, so again, I am telling you to go back to the document that CXC sent out with the breakdown of the topics that are coming for your exam, and use those topics to revise. You only revise and that. Yes, paper 1 is going to come with questions from throughout the syllabus, but for paper 2, stick to that. Okay. Let's see if we can just run through it quickly. I'm seeing more questions coming up. Let's just give you an idea how to plan your essay. Different ways to plan your essay. So when you go into the exam room, the first thing you have to do is plan out your essay before you start writing. So the 20 marks question, the marks is broken down in this way: 6 marks for knowledge, 8 marks for use of knowledge, and 6 marks for inquiry and communication. Okay, so these essays, these shorter essays generally test a particular aspect of the topic. So they look at describe ways or explain how, and you should not spend more than 35 minutes on these questions. Then you have the longer essays, the 30 marks essays, and these would normally be discuss or evaluate or assess the extent. And notice for this one, use of knowledge is 12 marks. Knowledge is 10 marks, and inquiry and communication is 8 marks. So in the one above, use of knowledge was 8 marks. Here it's 12 marks, which means that they are looking for you to analyze. And when you are looking to analyze, you need to use things like, on the one hand, we can see the positive impact, but on the other hand, we can see negative impact. Or on the one hand, sports tourism is important, but yet still it is limited. So that is the kind of the writing style that they're looking at for the longer essay. It needs to be more analytical. Okay, you're not just regurgitating the information, you are analyzing it, you are assessing it, you're being more argumentative. Okay, so on the one hand, on the other hand, on one level, we see X, Y, and Z, but on another level, it can be stated that. That is the kind of language you need in order to get full marks, as high marks as possible for type B essays, because they are looking for more analytical kind of essays. So for the type B ones, the 30-mark essays is discuss, evaluate, assess the extent to. For the type A essays is normally describe or explain. So those are more, I don't want to say regurgitate information, but those are more content-based. You have to give back the information. But in the type B essays, you have to analyze, and you have to show that you are thinking for both sides. You're thinking positive and negative. You're thinking advantages and disadvantages. Okay, and that is the major difference between the 2 types of essays that you're required to write. Okay, stop sharing my screen, and I'm going back to your questions, and I'm going to take the last set of questions now before I wrap up. Okay. how many paragraphs should each essay have? Now, again, I tell students, don't focus on the length of the essay, focus on the content, focus on what you write. You don't want to have an essay with 5 paragraphs that just going all over the place and not answering the question. You want to have an essay with the points that are specific to the question. So focus not on length, but focus on points. Okay, for at 30 marks, for an essay with 30 marks, if they don't ask you for both negative and positive, you should give at least 5 points. If they ask you for both sides of it, then you have to give at least 3 negative and at least 3 positive. So you want to make sure that you're writing enough points to get as high mark as possible. Okay, so it's not length, it's the points and how well you develop the points. How exactly do we structure the paragraph with many sub-points? Like for economic stimulus, there's employment, increase in GDP, and many more. Good question. So some of the points, you might need more than 1 paragraph to explain it because it is so much to explain. That is fine. In the case of economics, we had so many things that you can say. So feel free to put it in more than 1 paragraph. If you think that it's going to be too long and you're running out of time, then choose out of all the points for economic, choose the ones that you think stand out the most so you can explain the best and focus on those. Okay, so, but if your paragraph is too long, feel free to go into another paragraph. Don't let your paragraph go on and on and on for a whole page. Typically, a paragraph is 8 to 10 sentences, not a whole page that is going on and on and on. Okay. Question. I'm just getting a lot of questions asking me if I can do social institutions and integration, which obviously is the 2 topics that you all really either don't like or not comfortable with. Cape history class, I didn't have any session for Cape history. Sorry, I had for CSEC history so far. Regional integration, is that difficult? Okay, I think I covered most of the questions. I put the email on the chat. So for those of you who said you wanted to get in touch with me, you can do that through that email. For those of you who want to volunteer, again, it's Support Autism TNT. And you can find us on Facebook or Instagram. I just posted it in the chat as well. Okay. How do I get a link for the WhatsApp group? I don't have a WhatsApp group actually. I just have the email for you to contact me. I don't have a WhatsApp group for Cape Caribbean Studies. Okay, what else? Okay, I think that's it for now. I am going to end there. I hope that this session would have helped you with sports. Again, I say to you that sports is one of these simpler topics. It was one of the most straightforward topics. All the information is in this recording that I will be posting on YouTube in a little bit. And I think once you go through it, you will be able to answer an essay on sports. What I would advise you to do, strongly advise you to do, is that at the end of the presentation, I had a list of the questions, right? I want you all to attempt at least 1 or 2 of those questions. You don't need to write it out as a full essay, but take the questions, write your thesis statement, and write the points that you would be using in the that you would use to support the thesis statement. And that there is your revision. Once you do that, you have sports done and you're ready to go into an exam room and you're ready to write your exam. Okay, so consider just sitting down after the session is finished. Consider sitting down with the recording or with the questions and just answer the questions. Just write down your points for each one of those questions. that is, what I did is I literally anticipated how the questions would come, and they can mix the different ones like regional integration, like national Caribbean nationalism and sports tourism together and so on. But once you know the points for each, you will be okay. Okay, you will be able to answer a question. It's just literally pull in the questions now, the points now for whatever question that you have. So if you want to revise it, the best way to revise the topic is to now sit down with the questions and plan them out. You don't necessarily have to write it out fully, but just plan them out and you will be fine. And I guarantee you, when you do that, you will go into the exam room and you will do very well in this question. Okay? So thank you all so much for making the effort to come out. I am sorry, the Zoom account was for 500 students and we had 500 students logged on. I'm sorry for the others who could not get on. If you had friends who were trying to get on, please let them know that we could only accommodate 500 and that they can access it on the YouTube channel. And I will let you know, I will send out the flyers as soon as I figure out if I can do any more session and when those will be. So thank you very much for attending, and good luck in your exam. Just keep preparing, you will be fine. Okay, take care everyone and be safe. Bye.